Up to the point before the previous class, whatever we have done belonged to the subject which can actually be called quantum statics, in the sense that the potential function, the potential energy V, was completely independent of time. And in that case, the Schrodinger equation that you had written earlier, like H psi equal to IH bar del psi del t, the time dependent Schrodinger equation, could be solved by separation of variables, where you had the total psi of RT, which you can actually separate into psi of R and phi of t and take it as a product. And this psi of R, the radial dependent wave function, basically satisfied the time independent Schrodinger equation, which was generally written as H psi equal to E psi. And also phi of t was written as e to the minus IET by h bar. It was a trivial time dependence. The time dependence of the separable solution basically is carried by this phi of t, and this cancels out when one constructs the physically relevant quantity, which is nothing but psi of RT mod squared. And then all the probabilities and expectation values are constant in time, and therefore by forming the linear combinations of the stationary states, you can obtain the wave functions with more I should say interesting kind of time dependence. But even then, the possible values of energy and their respective probabilities, everything remained constant. Now, what we did in the last class is that we said that we want to treat our system in full generality and allowing the potential to depend on time. The first thing that you will see is that allowing the potential to depend on time will actually allow for transitions, which are also known as quantum jumps, because this is something like the system basically changes from one state to another state, or transitions from one state to another state. In general, if the system is in a stationary state, then as time goes by, nothing changes, nothing happens. But now, if you incorporate time dependence in the potential, that actually opens up the possibility of having transitions. And that really takes you from the regime of what I just said as quantum statics to something which you will call quantum dynamics. And we have already said about this, and we also discussed the different pictures in this context. And you already know that we have discussed the Schrodinger picture, we have discussed the Heisenberg picture, and then we just started to discuss the interaction picture. So today I will first finish that discussion, and then I will calculate one concrete example. I will solve a problem that will give you some physical insights into this time dependent perturbation theory. Now, for that reason, let us actually look at the things that we have said in the last class. So remember, we said in the last class that in the Schrodinger picture, we had the state gate, which we denoted by this vector psi of t, and this can be thought of as rotating in the Hilbert space, and that is why they were changing with time. But you also know, as a vector rotates in time or in the Hilbert space, the magnitude is remaining unchanged. Whereas in the Heisenberg picture, you are actually thinking of the observer who is kind of sitting on the state gate psi. Therefore, it will see that the frames in which you are calculating, that frames are rotating. Frames rotating means the basis vectors are rotating. And basis vectors rotating or basis vectors changing with time means that the operators should now be time dependent. So that is what was the brief picture that I had given you in the last class about Schrödinger and Heisenberg approach to quantum mechanics. And we also, if you remember, we also had derived an equivalent equation. Remember, in the Schrödinger picture, the Schrödinger equation gave you how the time evolution of the state gate happens. And in the Heisenberg picture, this equation, which is known as the Heisenberg equation of motion, tells you how the operator changes, because now all the time dependence are on these operators. So roughly these were the differences between Heisenberg and Schrödinger picture. And then we introduced something which is known as the interaction picture. And we said that this is going to help in our discussion. And we are going to see how it is basically helping the problem at hand. Now, what is happening in the interaction picture? Firstly, this is a mixture of the Schrödinger as well as the Heisenberg picture. And in fact, if you remember, this equation I h bar ddt of psi t equal to h of psi is the starting equation, where your h of t, the full Hamiltonian, is now nothing but h0 plus h prime. And as you might remember, we said that this h0 was independent of time, and it is exactly similar to some known Hamiltonian, known in the sense that you know what are the eigenvalues and eigenvectors of this Hamiltonian h naught. And on the other hand, we said that this h prime, which in the time independent case was independent of time, this h prime is no longer time independent, rather there is a time dependence involved in this. Therefore, this Hamiltonian, full Hamiltonian, which we had denoted by h, is now dependent on time. Now, our goal will be to basically solve for this kate psi of t. So that we need to solve. So that is what our ultimate goal will be. And to solve for kate psi t, we need to introduce this interaction picture. So let us recall what was this interaction picture. What I said was that this h0 that was there, which was basically the time independent Hamiltonian, known Hamiltonian, this h0 has to be used to define some kind of Heisenberg operator, and we should use this h prime, which was a time dependent part of the Hamiltonian, to write down the Schrödinger equation. It will be more clear as we proceed. So remember, we also discussed in the previous class about the time evolution operator, and we said that suppose I start with this state kate psi of 0, and then I want to know what this state kate at psi t equal to 0 becomes as time goes by. And we said that if we have this operator u of t, then this u of t is an unitary operator, and its form is e to the power minus I h t by h bar, where h is the Hamiltonian for the system. And this ut was called the time evolution operator. And we also remember the way we defined the Schrödinger and the Heisenberg operators. It was nothing like we started with the Schrödinger operator. This s in the superscript within bracket denotes or reminds us that this is the operator in the Schrödinger picture. That means that we do not have any explicit time dependence in this operator, rather all the state gates are time dependent. So this object, this expectation value, is completely written in the Schrödinger picture. Now we know how to write down this psi t starting from the initial state gate psi 0, because psi 0, when acted upon by this ut, which is the time evolution operator, this gives you this psi t. Similarly, psi 0 bra when acted upon by u dagger gave you bra psi t. Therefore, I simply write this psi t bra and psi t kate in terms of u psi 0 and u dagger psi 0 bra, and I get this next step where I have denoted this u dagger ASU by AH, which is nothing but the Heisenberg operator in the Heisenberg picture. So this was the definition of the Heisenberg operator. This AH, which is a time dependent operator, basically is defined as u dagger t as ut, where u dagger t and ut are unitary operators. And for our present case, we know, I have already mentioned this, that this is the form of the unitary operator, which is known as the time evolution operator. Now you actually start with this definition, that psi of t is nothing but u of t acting on psi of 0. And then if you take u dagger on both sides, what you actually arrive at is this equation, which is nothing but you can write down your kate psi 0 by acting u dagger of t on the state kate psi of t. So this, as I said, pictorially can be thought of as taking the state psi t to rest, or bringing the state psi t to rest. And the operator u dagger t therefore can be thought of as removing the time dependence from the state gate. So if we now try to use this idea in our example means that we have started with the Hamiltonian, which is now time dependent and which has two parts. One is the time independent part, another is the time dependent part. And here is where you can actually do the time evolution through Heisenberg with this H0, where there is no explicit time dependence, and you actually can let the Schrodinger picture to do the work for H prime t. How? So let us again go into a little bit detail, that this is where we have actually started, that u dagger t acting on kate psi t gave me psi 0. Remember, that's what was our starting point. And now I explicitly wrote down this form of u dagger t, which is nothing but e to the power I h0 t by h bar acting on psi of t, and I define this new state, which I denote by psi tilde of t. So this is basically telling you that the operation of e to the power I h0 t by h bar, which itself is an operator, acting on psi of t, takes or brings this state psi of t to the state of rest, in the sense that there is no explicit time dependence, it is not changing with time. Then this quantity, whatever it is, should be independent of time. But now we also know that the total Hamiltonian with which we started has a part h naught as well as h prime, where h prime was dependent on time. So the total Hamiltonian was simply not h0. This object will in general not be time independent. It is for sure. If it would be h0 only, then I can say clearly that okay, this is the psi tilde t is completely independent of time. So this is therefore a wave function or the state gate in which we have removed the time evolution having to do, which has something to do with the h0 part. Because if h prime t is 0, then I could have without doubt have said that the psi tilde is constant in time. It is no longer changing in time, but it is not the case. So we have actually introduced this new variable psi tilde of t, and we need to find out what is psi tilde of t. So our problem now actually has gone into a new statement or new form, Earlier we said that we were looking for the solution psi of t, but now I am saying that let us look for psi tilde of t, and it is very easy to figure out what is psi of t once I know the psi tilde of t. So let us write down the Schrodinger equation for psi tilde of t. What is that? That is nothing but I h bar del del t of psi tilde of t. But psi tilde of t has a definite form which is given by this. So you do this calculation and then finally you arrive at this expression. I have discussed this in the previous class, so I am not going into that discussion again. So look at this equation. So I am calling this exact thing inside the bracket, first bracket on the right hand side, e to the power I h naught t by h bar h prime of t, e to the power minus I h naught t by h bar. This whole quantity I am calling h tilde of t. So that is the definition of h tilde prime of t. And the Schrodinger equation therefore looks something like I h bar del del t of psi tilde of t h bar prime t psi tilde of t. This should be psi tilde of t. So in terms of our new variable psi tilde of t, my problem has now been reduced to this with the new form of the Hamiltonian being this and the new form of the state gate being this. So the time evolution left in psi tilde t is basically generated by this Hamiltonian, which I have called h tilde prime of t, via this Schrodinger equation that is written here. And the operator h prime tilde t, which is here, is nothing but the Heisenberg version of h prime t, which one generates by using h0. So these are the similarities. These two basically imply that it is the interaction picture which is the mixture of both the Heisenberg as well as the Schrodinger picture. So this is the beauty of this picture, that you actually have two things here. One is that the time evolution that is left in psi tilde t, because remember I said that the total Hamiltonian is not h0, it also has a h tilde or h prime part. That h prime part was dependent on time. So just by operating e to the power I h0 t by h bar onto this state gate psi, it will not remove the complete time dependence out of the state gate, or it will not fix the state gate psi in time, because there is this h prime part. So the time evolution that was left in the state gate psi tilde t is basically being generated by h tilde prime t via this Schrodinger equation, and the operator which I have written here, h prime tilde t, is nothing but the Heisenberg version of the h prime t, which is basically generated using the unperturbed metric, unperturbed Hamiltonian. So we can now write down everything using an orthonormal basis. So that is the question that I ask, that whether it is possible to write, and the answer is that yes, we can write. We can write everything down using an orthonormal basis. Now I will next ask is that is there any orthonormal basis available in this problem? And the answer is yes, of course there is this orthonormal basis which is available in this problem. There exists a complete orthonormal basis of states for the unperturbed Hamiltonian h naught, because you have already written this as h naught acting on un is equal to en un. Now here I want to point out the fact that unlike time independent perturbation theory, we are not going to use any subscript 0 here. Remember, where we used time independent perturbation theory, we always had written one subscript or superscript here in this expression of en or en0 here somewhere. So that subscript or superscript we are not going to use, since neither the states nor their energies are going to be corrected, because That is what we are not looking into. Remember the statement of the problem that I had made in the previous lecture? We clearly said that we are not going to look at the corrected energies or corrected states. This is completely different. Here we are looking into the probability of finding this system in a different state that we are going to calculate because of the time dependent perturbation that we are applying on the system. That is going to excite your system, and the system is no longer in a stationary state. So there is a transition from one state to another state, and we are going to calculate those probabilities. So what we do here is the standard trick. These I know are a set of orthonormal bases. Irrespective of the fact that they are only correct or only the energy eigenstates of the unperturbed Hamiltonian, I can use them to write any vectors. So now I write this as psi tilde t as sum over n Cn t un. Now, I mean, of course, you will say that, I mean, whether this writing as a linear combination of all the orthonormal basis vectors is justified or not. As I said, it is of course justified because the states un, the state states or the eigenstates un, they form a basis, and hence they can be used all the time to describe the state of a system. Now remember, we started with this original state state psi of t, and we had obtained psi of t by operating e to the minus IH0 t by h bar on psi tilde t. But now what I am going to do is that I am going to basically use this superposition here, that psi tilde t can be written as a linear combination of uns. That fact I am going to use here. So I will replace this psi tilde t by this summation Cn t un, and then there are of course this e to the minus IH0 t by h bar from this term. Therefore state state psi t can be written as Cn e to the minus IEN t by h bar un. So this is true simply because e to the power minus IH0 t by h bar actually commutes with this Cnt. So this can come here, and then this acting on un is definitely going to give you e to the minus IEN t by h bar. So our job now is even more simplified. We will say that in order to find out what my psi t is, I will actually figure out what are the coefficients are. So once I know what these coefficients Cnt's are, then my job is done. Then I will write a linear combination and I will get back this state psi of t. Now as already stated, I have already told that if h prime were 0, we know that psi tilde t would have been a constant. The Cn's would be also constant. Now if Cn's are constant and if there is no h prime, in the sense that h prime t, then this equation 26, this tells us how energy eigenfunctions evolve in time, which you have already encountered. You have already encountered this thing in the stationary state discussion at the very beginning of your quantum mechanics course of PH 204, where you already knew how to write down this state psi t. The only difference now here is that these Cn's are now time dependent. So now the next question is, what does the Schrodinger equation tell us about these Cn's? Because our goal now is to figure out what are these Cnt's. Then what should we do? We will simply take this equation. There is this equation, this 25 equation number, and we will put this back to the Schrodinger equation for psi tilde t. So we will put this psi tilde t into that equation 24, and what we will obtain is this. Remember, I will have IH bar ddt sum over m cmt um, and then on the right hand side I had h prime tilde t, which was acting on ket psi tilde t, but this ket psi tilde t I had written like this, which is allowed. So this means we are basically looking at the Schrodinger equation in a basis, and you know that once I look at these equations in a basis, by choosing a basis, life becomes much more simpler. So let us look at what happens. So this ddt operator will first act on this cmt, and this will give me cm dot t, where a dot means the derivative with respect to time. And in the second, in the right hand side, what we are going to do is that we are going to introduce this identity, which of course is going to give you 1, or identity matrix, sum over m ket bra, that is unity, and that we know we had already h prime t summed over cnt and then un. Now let us look at this right hand side carefully. Here what we have is that we have two different sums. One is over m, another one is over n. So I write this sum as the following, that I have sum over m um, but then I have bra acting on h prime t un. So this h prime t is sandwiched between and un, and then of course there is this cn of t. But I am going to use a shorthand notation for this matrix element. This I know that this is nothing but the matrix element of this operator h prime tilde in the basis un. So this I am going to denote by h prime t tilde mn. So I have h prime t mn tilde cnt um, and on the left hand side I have ih bar cm dot t um. Now as usual, you know what to do. If we are having an equation which looks like 27, we know what is the method we need to follow. That is, we have to equate the coefficients of the basis kets, I mean from both sides of this equation 27, and therefore I will have ih bar cm dot t equal to sum over n h prime tilde mn cn. So the Schrodinger equation, therefore, what has been done because of this is that the Schrodinger equation has now become an infinite set of coupled first order ordinary differential equation. We started with the Schrodinger equation, and then what we did is that we have substituted the superpositioned wave function, and then we have a series. There is a sum from n equal to 0 to infinity, and then this is going to be equivalent to the Schrodinger equation. Now let us actually look at the matrix elements which we have written here. What are h prime tilde mn? By definition, h prime tilde mn is nothing but this expression that we have evaluated, that we have to evaluate now, and you know that h prime tilde t is basically related to your original perturbation h prime of t, and this is related like this Heisenberg operator form. And you also know that these ums and uns, they are the eigenstates, and we know what are the actions of this Hamiltonian, unperturbed Hamiltonian H0 on ums. That is why we had chosen this um and un, in which we had expanded that psi tilde. So that was the reason. So when this e to the minus I h0 t by h bar acted on un, it will give us e to the power minus I en t by h bar, where en is just a number. Similarly, this acting on bra is going to give me e to the power I emt by h bar, where em is just a number. So h prime tilde mn therefore is nothing but, after all these operations are done, we will be left with factors like exponential I by h bar. This will come with a negative sign, this will come with a positive sign. So this will be e to the power I by h bar em minus en into t outside, because these are now numbers. So this is just a fixed thing. And then we have the matrix element h prime t in the basis of H0, in the energy eigenbasis. And then using some shorthand symbols like omega mn is defined as em minus en by t, then this is e to the power I omega mn t, and then h prime mn t. So this, therefore, we can write this equation 28 as I h bar cm dot t, and then we had on the right hand side h tilde prime mnt and then cnt, and then on top of that we also had a summation over n. So everything can be taken care of, because h tilde mn I have now written in terms of h prime mn, and then there is this exponential factor coming in. So equation 28 therefore can be recast into this form. So let us stop for the moment and think a little bit what we have achieved by doing this. What it tells you is that we have to use now some method, which can be some numerical method or some other method, some analytical methods, to solve this set of equation only. Our initial target was to solve the Schrodinger equation, which was a second order ordinary differential equation. Instead, what we are looking at is basically a first order differential equation. And that's what we are going to do now. So we are taking the example of a two-state system. So far what we have discussed is completely general. Now I will discuss the two-state system, and then I will add a small perturbation different than what I am discussing in this first example. And we will see that everything that we are going to derive in this part, in this subsection you may say, can be derived from this expression only. So let us start. We have a two-state system, and let us suppose that there are just two states of the system to start with, which is unperturbed, and therefore there are these eigenstates of the Hamiltonian, which I have written as H naught acting on Kate A, giving me the energy eigenvalue EA and then the Kate A back. Similarly, H0B giving me EB B Kate. And also we will say that this inner product is there, bra A Kate B is equal to delta AB. That means there is this orthonormality condition, and any state therefore can be expressed as a linear combination of these A's and B's. So if I have this vector psi 0, Kate psi 0, I am allowed to write this linear combination of the energy eigenstates. So what we should remember is that these state Kates, these energy eigenkates, can be anything. This can be wave function, this can be spinors, this can be anything else. Only what matters in this whole problem is how and where the time dependence enter. That is the crucial part. Now we know that if we simply start with the Hamiltonian H0, which is unperturbed, then before I switch on the perturbation, the state Kate is given by this. This is the standard usual procedure, the stationary states, that you have Ca, the coefficient, then this Kate A, and then e to the minus I E A t by h bar. Then you have Cb, then your B ket, and then e to the minus I e b t by h bar. So this is the general rule. And you also know that mod of Ca squared plus mod of Cb squared is going to give you 1, where mod Ca squared basically tells you about the probability that the particle should be in state A, or in other words, this tells you the probability that will yield the value of the energy to be Ea. Now let us introduce the perturbation. So suppose at a later time t, we have a perturbation which we denote by h prime of t. Now, as discussed already in the general discussion today, that these A's and B's, these are the energy eigenstates, and therefore they constitute a complete set, and any state psi of t can still be expressed as a linear combination of these two states A and B. So what you do is that you write this psi of t ket as Ca, but now these Ca's and Cb's are going to be functions of t. And as already said, solving the Schrodinger equation gave you the equation for Ca's, as you have already seen here, the first order equations. Here also your task will simply be to determine the Ca's and Cb's. So if we need to proceed from here without knowing what our interaction picture was, what to do with these psi t's, the question is, can we just straightforward go ahead and see what is happening? The answer is yes, of course it will be straightforward to go ahead and see what is happening, but the interaction picture that I had introduced is the most general way to look at this problem. So having said that, let me just start with this equation. This is a standard Schrodinger equation, time dependent Schrodinger equation for the state ket psi of t. And we also have said that my h is basically the unperturbed Hamiltonian plus the time dependent perturbation Hamiltonian. So what you do is that you replace this h by h naught plus h prime of t, and then you use the superposition that you have used to write this psi of t. So here we will have h0 plus h prime together to act on these things. So to the left hand side as well as to the right hand side also. Now immediately you note something very interesting. You know that Ca of t is there, but then h0 can actually directly act on A, and it should give you e to the power minus IEAT by h bar. So, but also we can simply keep this h0 acting on A, then there is e to the minus IEAT by h bar. Similarly, if you look at h0 with this term, then you will have Cb of t, and then h0 acting on ket B, and then e to the power minus IEBT by h bar. Now you have these Ca's, and these Ca's, and then we have h prime of t instead of h0. Now we will have h prime acting on A, and the last term will be Cb, h prime acting on B. What about the right hand side? Right hand side, there are time derivative, but it acts on the coefficient as well as on these exponential factors. So you can calculate that, and if you calculate, you will see that this term, which is CAA, and when del t acted on e to the minus IEAT by h bar, one factor of minus IA by h bar comes out, and then e to the minus IEAT by h bar is there. Similarly, CB acting on B is there, but then del t acting on this e to the minus IEBT by h bar is going to give you this factor. And overall, if you look at, there was this I h bar factor outside, so this I with the minus sign is going to become plus 1, h bar cancels with this one, so what remains is CAA and then EA e to the power minus IEAT by h bar. But you know that H0 acting on A is also going to give me EA acting on A. So this term and this term are basically same, therefore they cancel. Similarly, you can show that this term and this term are also same and they will cancel. So the final equation that we arrive at after all these things is this. So there is nothing to explain from this equation except the fact that I want to now find out how these coefficients are changing, because that is our goal. So I need to separate one of these coefficients or the time derivative of the coefficients, and for that the best way to proceed is that you actually take the dual vector of A and then you operate it from the left side. So that's what you do on the left hand side and also on the right hand side. So now you have operated bra A. So here it will come as a bra A, here it will come as a bra A, and then in the right hand side only this term, only the first term will survive. Because of the orthonormality criteria, this will become 0 because this will be AB inner product, which is 0. Because AB inner product is delta AB, it is only non-zero, only existing when A is equal to B. So finally the equation that you will arrive at for C dot AT is nothing but this equation. It's very easy to obtain this equation because already your right hand side contains this C dot AT. The only thing that you need to do is to remove this time dependence from this, as well as remove this factor. So for that, what you do, you multiply both sides by minus I by h bar e to the power I EAT by h bar, and also use this notation. Then what will happen is that you will get the equation for evolution for the coefficient Ca of t. So this is ddt of Ca of t is written in terms of the matrix elements H prime AA, the perturbed matrix elements, the diagonal part here and the off diagonal part here. Similarly, if you look at the time derivative of Cb, the other coefficient, then also you will find out that this is what can be obtained from this equation and these equations. Now, these two sets of equations, they completely determine C of A and C of B. And if you take together these two, they are completely equivalent to the Schrodinger equation. That is why I am stressing the fact that we started with the Schrodinger equation, which is a second order linear ordinary differential equation. But now, because of this type of procedure, what we are arriving at is basically the equation for time evolution of these coefficients. So now I actually come to a specific example. This specific example you will find in Griffith's book, which is the problem number 9.3. This is going to teach us a lot in many interesting things, and we will be learning how to calculate also when we have time dependent perturbation. So what we have now is basically nothing but the perturbation which is h prime of t, which is v times the Dirac delta function, delta of t. So we have the perturbation which takes the form of a delta function, and the form of this perturbation h prime of t is nothing but v times the delta function t. That means if this is my time axis, then at this point t equal to 0, I have a infinite surge, and then that is basically the delta function sitting as at t equal to 0. On top of this, you also assume that VAA and VBB, the matrix element of this matrix V, they are 0. That means the diagonal elements are 0. However, the off diagonal elements VAB and VBA star. Remember, this must be Hermitian, so VAB should be equal to VBA star, and let us call that alpha. Therefore, my V matrix is nothing but VAA, VAB, VBA, VBB, and I have just said that the diagonal elements are 0 and the off diagonal element, one is alpha, another one is alpha star. Now, remember, we are discussing everything in the context of the two-state system, okay, two-level system or two-state system, whatever you want to call. And in the two-state system, you also recall that you have this H naught, which is your unperturbed Hamiltonian with which you have started your problem. And these EA and EBs are the energy eigenvalues. And you also know that when this H0 acts on A, it gives you EA acting on A, and then H0 on B is going to give you EB on B. So this is what you are going to get. And you also define omega AB to be EB minus EA by H bar, which we say, suppose for simplicity, for the sake of simplicity, let us call this, denote this omega 0. But now let us look at the problem carefully. What this problem says is that I have some system which is being denoted by the Hamiltonian H0. That means I am having this system like this, and everywhere the Hamiltonian is H0 when I am starting from t less than 0, suppose at t equal to minus infinity. Then I reach t equal to 0, and then certain violent perturbation is there, which is denoted by V delta t, exactly at the point t equal to 0, and then everything stops, and then again as t greater than 0 I have that H0, the unperturbed Hamiltonian. Only in between I have H prime of t, which is nothing but a delta function. So that is my problem now. So there is a sudden violent perturbation at t equal to 0 with the off diagonal elements being non-zero. That means VAB and VBA are non-zero. In fact, these are the elements, these off diagonal elements basically creates the transition. So having the off diagonal elements sitting here or having them non-zero is a good thing, because of these terms the transitions happen. Now, what is there to find out therefore? So given this problem, our job will be to start with the system when this system is at a state A, at a time which is further away from t equal to 0, which for the sake of completeness, let us say t equal to minus infinity. So the problem is that at t equal to minus infinity, I start with the state ket A, which happens to be the energy eigenket of the unperturbing Hamiltonian H naught. And the question I want to ask is, what is the probability that it is actually in another eigenstate B as time goes to plus infinity? That means as we have encountered the Dirac delta perturbation at t equal to 0, what should the state change to? So from here ket A to here, maybe a linear combination of A and B or just B. So the question is, what is the probability that I will find the system in the state B at a later time after t equal to 0? So this is the precise statement of the problem, and this is basically Griffith's problem number 9.3. Now let us think a little bit, because this problem is a little bit tricky. So first let us note that if the system is in state A at a very previous time, say t going to minus infinity, it should have been remaining in the same state ket A until it actually reaches t equal to 0 minus, that means very close to t equal to 0, just before the perturbation is turned on. Because this is in a stationary state, H0 are the energy, have the energy eigenstates which are denoted by these ket A, ket B, etc. And since I have started in one of these stationary states, I will expect that the system doesn't do anything as time goes by. But now, as I said, I have actually introduced a perturbation at t equal to 0, which is a delta function perturbation. Something will happen. Now, we can actually state this problem in a little bit more simpler way. So, as I said, A and B are eigenstates of H naught. Now, if our system is in the state A, it will remain in A because it is an energy eigenstates, and it will remain in A forever if there is no disturbance. But immediately I have said that at t equal to 0, I have created a disturbance. I have kicked the system with this delta function. A violent perturbation is there, and that perturbation is also happening in the off diagonal elements of the V matrix. Therefore, this will suggest a transition from the state A to state B. Of course, I have forgotten to write the ket sign as usual. So, the transition, therefore, I have to note one important thing at this point is that whatever transition that happens, it happens in an instantaneous moment. It happens instantaneously because the perturbation is not waiting for anything. It just at the very time t equal to 0, there is a sharp peak and then it goes down immediately at t equal to 0 because there is a delta function at time, and at time t equal to 0. Now, after the delta function perturbation, the system does not change anymore. After I have introduced this at t equal to 0, the system reaches to some other state, and whatever state it is, it remains there. So, before t equal to 0, I know that the system is in state A, and after t equal to 0, it immediately does a transition, and it can be a linear combination of state A and state B. I do not know what is the probability at the moment. That is precisely the answer that we need to find out. So, to look into this problem, let us actually go back to our equation number 35 and 36, which basically tells us that if we have a two-state system, how the coefficients CA's and CB's are changing. So, in this particular problem of this delta function, I am writing those CA dot T and CB dot T. But now I keep in mind the fact that my off diagonal elements are only non-zero, but the diagonal elements are all 0 of these H prime. Therefore, I will no longer have this term in CB dot, and I will no longer have this term in CA dot. So, my equation for CA dot and CB dot will be CA dot equal to minus I by H bar CB into H prime AB and then e to the power I omega naught t. That is what I will expect, and that is what I have written here. So, this is CA dot, which is minus I by H bar H prime AB e to the minus I omega 0 t and then CB. Similarly, CB dot is going to be written like this. So, what I do now is that I know what is the mathematical form of these H prime AB and H prime BA. They are known to me, and they are nothing but alpha delta t. I know H prime AB is nothing but alpha delta t. If you look at this V matrix, this is 0 alpha, alpha star 0, and then there is a delta function sitting here. So H prime AB is nothing but alpha delta t here, and then H prime BA is alpha star delta t. So I have simply written that here. And presence of this delta function here, it clearly implies that the equations only matters when t is equal to 0. It does not have any contribution anywhere else. Now, let me remind you of one very interesting identity, which is you might have encountered already in your electrodynamics course. If I have the Dirac delta function means that we have the property delta x dx equal to 1, and you also have delta x to be infinite at x equal to 0, and it is 0 otherwise. So that is the property, that is the definition of the Dirac delta. So this is some identity that you might have already encountered. Now the question is, can we actually apply this identity to these equations? Because this seems something very interesting, because my problem, the right hand side of both these equations have the form of f of t as cbt e to the power minus I omega 0 t or cat e to the power plus I omega 0 t. So our question is, can we simply use this and write everything here in terms of t equal to 0 or not? Now the answer is that we can partially do that. That means I can use this for e to the power plus minus I omega naught t, but we cannot use this identity for the functions cat and cbt. Why? What is the problem if I apply this identity to the functions cat and cbt? The problem is here. See, these cat and cbt's, they are expected to be discontinuous at t equal to 0, because this is just an instantaneous transition. So these are not continuous functions of time at t equal to 0. There is a sudden change. So that sudden change means that this cannot be applied for these functions cat's and cbt's, because we need a continuous function at t equal to 0 to apply this identity. So this is no longer possible, so we should not be able to write down this in our equation. So now that actually creates a problem, because I have this identity, a part of this identity, a part of which I can actually simplify this equation, a part of which I can simplify by using this property. And this is what I have done in this equation. I have simply applied this to this e to the power I omega 0 t and minus I omega 0 t factors, but I have kept this unchanged. So only to that exponential factors I have used this identity. But now we have a problem. What is that problem? The problem is the following. Look at this equation number 39. Equation number 39 is a problematic equation in the sense that there are these Dirac delta functions situated here, and we know that these Dirac delta functions are infinite at t equal to 0, or it is 0 otherwise, and I know that these Dirac deltas are actually exactly situated at t equal to 0. So the right hand side of this equation is basically a singular type of equation. I mean, like this is a very difficult equation to handle, and that is happening simply because of the presence of this Dirac delta function. So to deal with this situation physically, we need to introduce something which is called as a regulator. What is a regulator? See, we know that nothing in the universe can actually become infinite within zero time. I mean, making the function discontinuous across that t equal to 0 point. It's physically not acceptable at the point t equal to 0. So, to physically see this scenario, we can think of the Dirac delta function as follows. So, I say that there is at t equal to 0 the Dirac delta function situated, and we are here in two different regions, one to the left of t equal to 0, which is basically t less than 0 region where H0 is there, the unperturbed Hamiltonian. Then suddenly at t equal to 0, I have applied the perturbation, I have applied a kick to the system, I have kicked the system very heavily, and we have V times delta t as the perturbation. And once at t equal to 0 everything happened, it again goes back to H0, the Hamiltonian, and the system remains as it is. But in practice, this is very difficult to handle. So, what we will do here is the following. We will actually generalize this scenario. We will try to regulate this scenario by actually replacing this Dirac delta function by a function which I have denoted by delta t tilde as a function of t. What is that object? That object which I have defined here is nothing but a rectangle which has its base from 0 to t tilde and which has its height 1 by t tilde. What does this kind of peculiar thing do? It basically tells you that I have a rectangle whose sides are t tilde and 1 by t tilde. Therefore, integral of this function delta t tilde as a function of t dt from minus infinity to plus infinity will always give me 1, because the area of this object here is 1. That is one of the properties of the Dirac delta function which I have written here. Similarly, you also will claim, or you can also see here from the picture, you can actually make your t tilde going to 0, and if you make your t tilde going to 0, your 1 by t tilde will going to be increased, and therefore it will try to reach, like there will be several rectangles like this, and it will at some point in the limit t tilde tending to 0, it is expected that this delta t tilde t will become the Dirac delta function. What was the need to do this? The need to do this was to handle these deltas in the differential equation for Ca dot and Cb dot. So, this is the regulator in the terms of physics, in terms of physical languages. This is what is known as a regulator, because it regulates the infinities. Now, with this definition, what does this equation look like? Now I know that what is the form of delta t in the time interval 0 to t tilde. So, in the time interval 0 to t tilde, I have delta, capital delta t as 1 by t tilde. So, I will write this as alpha by t tilde cbt. Note now that my delta is gone, because delta has a specific form which is 1 by t tilde in the range 0 to t tilde. Similarly, I h bar cb dot t will again be alpha star by t tilde, which is again the replacement of delta of t, the Dirac delta of t. And also, this is very important that this is only true for the range or for the interval 0 to t tilde, and otherwise for any other time, if it is not in this range, the right hand side of the equation here vanishes. Now we need to solve for these CAs and CBs. And how should we solve? You are very much familiar with this kind of equations because this is a coupled equation. Here there is a CA dot T and here is a CAT. So the only way to solve them is that you take a second time derivative of the first equation here. So you take IH bar CA double dot T and then you will have alpha by T tilde, no changes here, but then this term will be CB dot T. And you replace this CB dot T from the second equation here, and what you will obtain here is this factor of 1 by IH bar and then alpha by T tilde from this factor alpha star by T tilde and then this CA of T. So now you have CA double dot in terms of CA of T. So CA double dot T therefore will be, there is one IH bar here, so I will take this on the right hand side. So it will become alpha star, that is mod alpha whole square divided by H bar square T tilde square, then CA of T. But now immediately you should object. You should raise your hand and you should say, sir, there is a problem. What is the problem? I have introduced this new time scale T tilde that was nowhere there in the original problem. Now my answer of this equation, solution of this equation will also depend on T tilde. That I do not want because I do not know what this T tilde is. That is not given to me. So the answer, the final answer better not depend on T tilde. And we have to figure out a way by which I can simply remove this T tilde from the final answer on the basis of course, some physical arguments. So let us look into this thing, how it is going to be done. So now I have a differential equation, second order differential equation for CA. I have the boundary conditions also and I know what these boundary conditions are. Initially, I had started with the state A, state ket A, energy is eigenstate A, ket A, and that ket A, I mean, if I have to be evaluated at very close point to t equal to 0, I know that CA0 must have been equal to 1. On the other hand, there was no part of ket B at the point t equal to 0, so this CB0 must be 0. So this is our initial starting point for the boundary condition. Now I solve this equation. It's just a second order ordinary differential equation and it's just going to give you some oscillatory function, and I know how should the equation look like, the solution look like. The solution for CA of T will look something like this, where A and B are of course the two constants of integration. Now you also note from this equation that your CBT is basically proportional to CA dot T. So you write your CBT as IH bar T tilde by alpha CA dot T. So this is the first equation that I am using here. So I will take this solution and take its time derivative to replace this CA dot T and I will get this equation. So CB of T also can be obtained and this also is an oscillatory solution. So I have solved for CA, I have solved for CB and I have found out some oscillatory behavior of them. But now I have to apply the boundary condition to figure out what these A's and B's are, what these A and B's are. So I know that CA0 equal to 1 but CB0 equal to 0. If I put T equal to 0 here, I will have this to be 1 but this to be equal to 0, and this is CA0 I know is equal to 1. So my A has to be 1. And similarly you can figure out your B has to be 0. Therefore, I will always claim that for in this interval 0 to T tilde, remember we are still using the regulated solution. In that interval, my solution will be here only the cosine term will remain and here only the sine term will remain. So this is cosine alpha t by h bar t tilde, and similarly Cb of t from this will be minus I alpha by mod alpha by alpha sine of this thing. Now when the perturbation, which is basically regulated to t equal to t tilde instead of t equal to 0, is turned off. So now instead of the Dirac delta function, which looked like this, I had something like this, and I had said this is my t tilde, and now I am at some point of t tilde, I am going to stop my perturbation. And as soon as I stop my perturbation at t tilde, the CAs and CBs will also stop changing or varying with time. And the constant value they take at the point t equal to t tilde will be their value at the rest part of the system. So after the perturbation is switched off, CA and CB should stop varying. The value that it takes at the point t tilde will remain constant because you are switching off the perturbation at the exact same point of t equal to t tilde. So what we will say is the following: CA evaluated at some time which is greater than t tilde. So what was greater than t tilde? So this is your Dirac delta function, this is your t tilde, this is 0, and this is your time axis. And what you are saying is that at t tilde you are actually putting your perturbation to be equal to 0. Then I am saying is that whatever the value CA and CB takes at this point of t tilde, that will remain unchanged throughout the evolution of the system, because there it is only H0 and there is no time dependence in H0. So I will simply say CA evaluated at t which is greater than t tilde, that means in this region, is nothing but whatever I obtain by putting t equal to t tilde into these equations. Because as I said, whatever the last value of CA and CB is at the point where H prime is put to be equal to 0 will be the values of CA and CB for the rest of the evolution. Therefore, in this equation, I will simply put t equal to t tilde and I will obtain what are the values of CAs and CBs. Isn't the argument beautiful? The argument is indeed really beautiful, and this tells you another interesting thing. Note, there is no longer any dependence of t tilde in neither of these equations, neither of these expressions for CAs and CBs. Immediately you can see that these values are independent of the regulator which you have introduced to get rid of the singular behavior of the equation which governed the dynamics of the coefficient CAs and CBs. This is completely independent of the factor t tilde. So we can safely take t tilde going to 0 limit, because t tilde going to 0 limit is going to give us the delta function back. So I will say CA t greater than 0, because there is now no longer any t tilde. I have taken the limit t tilde to going to 0, and because these expressions are no longer dependent on t tilde, I will simply get cos mod alpha by h bar for CA, and similarly I will get CB to be equal to this. And also not to forget that these were the values when t less than 0. And obviously you can check that this is going to be true. Mod CA square plus mod CB square equal to 1. What will be the state in this region? What will be the state state psi of t? It's very easy. We have already written it. It's nothing but CA, which is now dependent on time, and then this exponential factor, then this ket A. Similarly, the second term. Now that we have figured out what CA is, I will simply write this cos mod alpha by h bar, then there will be this e to the minus IEAT by h bar, and then this A ket. Similarly, CBT, I know this also is going to be replaced by the sine function. So this is the state after the delta perturbation was turned off. sorry, this should be turned off. So now you ask the final question, that is your goal. What is the probability of finding the system in the state B? Of course, when t is greater than 0. I mean, you immediately know what the answer is. You take the inner product with B, and if you take the inner product with B, you know that this is obviously going to be 0, and therefore whatever is here is nothing but this, and this is going to be mod of norm of B psi t squared, and this is nothing but this CBT mod squared, which is sine square mod alpha by h bar. Again, this is time independent. Similarly, PA of t, this you obtain by taking the inner product and then mod square. This is going to give you cosine square mod alpha by h bar. Again, this is time independent. So the time dependence factor is again here. Okay. So obviously the total probability should be constant and should be 1, because we have started with the normalization, normalized eigenkets. So nothing is going to give you any complicated result if you basically start with a particular scenario and then step by step you follow whatever has to be calculated. See, for example, in this particular problem, it is very wonderful to note that I have a system which was described by unperturbed Hamiltonian H naught for a time which is less than 0 as well as when t is greater than 0. But then I have disturbed the system at t equal to 0 with a delta function potential which looks something like otherwise, which itself is a problematic type of potential, simply because of the presence of this thing. At this point t equal to 0, the presence of this delta function ruins everything. So your h prime is basically v delta t, and then v of course has some off diagonal elements, and these off diagonal elements basically tells you that you are allowed to having transitions from some state to some other state. And then we saw that how the behaviors of CA dots and CB dots, they are going to be affected by the presence of this delta function, because the definition of this delta function. Then we said that okay, fine, this delta function cannot be there, because then I will not be able to calculate anything, because there is some irregularity, some singularity there on the right hand side of these equations. Then I said okay, fine, I will actually replace this delta function by something which I can handle, which is like a rectangle. Why a rectangle? Because as I said, you actually have, you can start with some rectangle whose length is say 0 to t tilde and whose height is 1 by t tilde. And then what you say is that I am actually making this t tilde going to 0. Then what happens is that its height becomes start to become more and more, and then as t becomes very close to 0, t tilde becomes very close to 0, it should give you a delta function. And keeping the properties of delta function intact, for example, integral delta t dt equal to 1, because this area under this curve here is basically going to give you 1 at all the points. So this is a valid regularization. It helps you to basically calculate everything for these CA dots and CB dots. And at the end, you take the limit t tilde going to 0. That's what exactly we have done. And we have therefore found out two important things, that after the perturbation is switched off, the system is not only in state gate B, rather it also has a finite contribution from the state gate A also. So it's a mixture of two different states. State A is also there, state B is also there, with different probabilities which are found out by these expressions. Okay, so let me stop today. We will continue to the next class.